It was in the 30s this morning. It's in the 20s this morning. It's cold on the motorcycle. It was in the 30s this morning. We zoom around. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the WDMA. We're talking more mail today. It's exciting. And here we go. Okay, this was, oops, I forgot to set up the YouTuber, so it's probably going to take me a second here. Forgot that one. There we go. Okay, so here's a building that they're renovating. I believe it's in London, Piccadilly, and you can see that it. Oops, now we got to put this button on, and you can see. Okay, you can see it's a building, and there's something over here which I can't read, and people messages. It's something about no one can see or hear. So it's something about if you're coming from the side, you're looking at it and you see this billboard over here. You think, oh, it's a billboard. Oh, it's a building. And this matches the building. It matches the building over here. Oopsie. I'm trying not to launch it yet while I explain. Okay, so and then it won't pick up my cursor. Okay, so the building on the left looks the same, and this is probably what the building looked like beforehand. Oh, now it's picking up the cursor. Okay, so now we're going to play the video, and if you're driving by or walking by, a lot of foot traffic in this area, if you're walking by, you see people looking out the window, windows closing, windows opening, and then you see the building like going up in smoke on fire. Now you see just the girders, and you see this steel curtain come down, and now you see that what's really in there is a big vault with your messages, tied up vault. See that, the vault, right? And then you get the rest of the message, WhatsApp, okay, Meta, owned by Meta. So they're making the claim, but I think it's really great the way this thing goes from what looks like an ordinary building into a vault and tells the story of personal encryption, all your messages encrypted. Okay, so that is exciting. Now if we go over to here, here's the story from Amy Houston. I always get good stories from Amy. They launched it. There isn't much of a story here, but the important point to me is that they launched a billboard, but they're a web company, right? So even the top of the line web companies have to have some kind of out of the web advertising. So if you've been a .com this whole time, you've been, since 1995, you've been selling on the web. I know you weren't, because back then we were debating whether anybody would sell on the web, and if you tried to do anything commercial, you'd get flamed, it was called, and all of the education people would send you emails and try to flood your servers and disrupt your operation, because they didn't want the internet to be capitalized on for commercial use. So that was a debate. Okay, and speaking of, there was an article over in London from City AM, which is a morning newspaper apparently, and this management guru, George Hadaway, who's the head of Western Europe at a document management firm called M-Files, described the printing industry as being on the verge of capitulation, which is like surrender, okay, if you're not British. Okay, so part of his pitch for organizations was to ditch the paper-centric practices in favor of a more modern and digitized approach. Never mind, that's what his company does. But he got interviewed in a newspaper, so hats off to his public relations firm. Beneath the headline, it says, UK print industry on the brink of collapse, warns management guru. And then there's all these pressures and stresses and stuff. But to reduce paper consumption should be the goal for businesses looking to operate more sustainably. And of course, the joke of that is there's nothing much more sustainable than raising a crop, harvesting it, and replanting it, raising it again, harvesting it, and replanting it. That's the paper industry, and recycling in the middle, right? We take most of the paper, especially pre-consumer paper, gets made into cardboard boxes and stuff. All that stuff gets recycled. So all the scrap and waste of commercial, like direct mail production, all goes right into packaging. I know because I've been in this for a long time. That was one of the first areas where we could really do a good job of recycling. It's like in the glass industry. You may not be able to recycle all the bottles that you think you put in your special recycle bin, but I went to a glass recycling plant down in Tennessee, and there was a mountain of broken windshields, which was a windshield manufacturing plant, and they break a few, and it was just a mountain of glass. Now that stuff recycles because you can keep the settings all the same, and you get a consistent product out, and it's beautiful. So pre-consumer is usually the way to go, and the printing industry is just famous for that. Never mind the forests, recyclable forests. And then a bunch of industry experts chimed in, and here's BPIF says that he's confusing electronic archiving with the overall shape, size, and performance of the UK print industry. It's not the same. And, I PDF a lot of stuff, but sometimes the paper saves me, and sometimes the PDF save me. So I believe that there's room for both in the world, right? But that does not speak to the 11 billion pound sector in the UK of the print industry, with employing over 100,000 people and having apprenticeships and all the rest of it. So it's a little tiresome when you see the media thoughtlessly reporting some bunk in the name of digital this or digital that. Okay, now we'll get to some really good stuff. As always, here comes Summer Gould, my friend, and she says, increase direct mail response with behavioral science, which sounds really exciting and is a good article, I should say. Oh, before we get to that one, I wanted to, Joel Quadracci, who's the son of Harry, wrote a pretty good article about and it's in Forbes, which is, big time. And it's about why Quad has always tried to disrupt their own processes. And by marketing to consumers differently, but also to disrupt yourself, to change internally and rethink the way you do things from the ground up. And so Quad is working on the marketing experience. And MX is about perfecting the marketing journey, just like CX is about perfecting the consumer journey, or the customer journey, usually people say. And quite simply, you can't deliver a great seamless CX if you have a clunky siloed MX. And there's some truth to that, and so friction in the marketing machine is awfully profitable. So one person does this and one person does that, and and people keep their jobs. There are very few people that are both AI experts or machine learning experts and also digital experts, I've noticed. Or they apply machine learning to digital but don't know how to do print at all. Even graphic designers rarely know how to do the visual hierarchy or do the proportioning of a catalog. Before you even start, you have to decide how many pages go to this and that, another thing. How do you even make those decisions? It's not simple. So marketing is typically very disintegrated. The whole system is set up to not be integrated. Okay? Well, it's time to push back at the marketing status quo. And of course, if you're huge, that's easy. I was impressed. I went to down to Colony Brands down in Monroe, Wisconsin, and I got a tour not only of what I got a tour of was their catalog production facility. They have a legitimate warehouse. The size, it's bigger than most companies' warehouses, and it's full of items for photography. Imagine, because they do their own photography mostly. They used to send it out in a disintegrated way. They would contract with one firm to shoot the furniture and another to shoot the apparel and another to shoot the food. And the president gave me the tour, which was nice of him. And then they decided to make it more integrated. Maybe they were listening to Quad. In fact, they decided to hire Quad as their photography contractor. And so Quad then had a significant portion of this warehouse. And the Quad photographers were shooting the pictures, the images. So they would take the items out of the warehouse, over to photography, back to the warehouse, or to the outlet store or something like that. And the whole thing was a big production machine. And Quad was, I always thought it didn't make sense to have your photographer. I mean, back in the old days, we would use this tracing machine to size the images and say and we would trace it in pencil, and we'd say this is kind of how we want this item shot. Then we would send the items to a photographer, and they would do their best to shoot it. But then we got all these different images from all these different places, and some of it was pickup art from manufacturers, and we would try to pull that together, and then you try to do color corrections in the separation process, which was another step that we don't do much of anymore. And then there was on press, we would try and do color corrections. But the problem is when you're doing multiple pages going through, if you adjust the color to make this picture right, then you mess up the picture, behind it. So it was a very disorganized process, and you couldn't really help yourself much. In fact, you could do more harm than good most of the time. So Colony has contracted with Quad to do that, to have the photography and the printing connected. Makes perfect sense, right? So then if you get the photography the way you want it, it's going to turn out on press the way you want it, because it's the same company running the process. So I admire Quad for that. On the other hand, yesterday I went on Duluth Trading, and I don't even know if anybody from Duluth is out there. Are you still mailing a catalog? Because you've got a beautiful digital catalog on your site, and it's on a site of QG Graphic Processes or something like that, is the host for your virtual catalog. So I'm assuming you're doing something similar where Quad is involved. I would say you should change the URL and make it look like Duluth, so it's not a different company. But when I paged through the catalog, and my wife was complaining about how her purse was falling apart, I clicked on a page, and the pages are sort of hot linked so that you can actually hit the product, and up comes the product. I got a picture of the product. I got very little copy, no dimensions, no pricing, nothing. Just sort of a picture of the product, like a bigger picture. And it took me about 5 minutes to figure out that there was a link, but it wasn't highlighted as a hot link. It just looked like ordinary type that took me to a product page. But then the picture disappeared in Firefox. Now in Chrome, it actually worked. My point is that even with an integrated MX, you might want to test your CX a little bit more, because it was a mess. And I wanted to send that product to my wife. I think I had to screen capture it eventually to get her an idea of what I was looking at. So it's not so simple as just integrating. You've got to integrate. You've got to do that last step and test your process and see what the consumer's trying to go through just to find out about the product. Just find out the dimensions, Plus, why not shoot it with some kind of scale reference, a pen or something, a lipstick tube or something that a woman would put in her purse. Just set it next to it, and you'll have a much better idea of the size of a purse, which, there's no way to tell how big it is. So I have to find the copy, and I have to dig for that. Just a couple of suggestions and why it's harder than you think to shoot a catalog. Now, I think we'll sign off for the day. You can go over, I'm going to save Summer's article for tomorrow because it's a really good article. But I did want to get to Quad, and, always have wanted to help Quad with their customer segmentation to grow circulation. So I'll probably reach out to Joel. I've talked to him a few times. Anyway, like and no, don't like, just share. Share the article and go to WDMA and get your print copy. No, get your archived digital copy of the print articles. Bye-bye.